Come gather round the story fire, come gather round and see the monsters and the magic both made by you and me.
Hi, come on in. Welcome to Whistlepig Tales Studio. My name is Jill Hardin, and I am the imagination behind Whistlepig Tales Studio. And I'm trying to be the courage behind Whistlepig Tales Studio too. Giving me a little courage this morning is my Laura Caroline Casas mug. It makes me very happy to drink out of it. And look at this bottom. Cute. How could I not be in a good mood drinking out of this big generous thing? Okay, so what are we doing here? When I was working at Red Lodge Clay Center, I met a young woman named Shauna Higgins, and she was pretty remarkable, a stalwart, funny gal. I like the cut of her jib, and she seemed to like me and befriended me. And during the pandemic in 2020, we had stayed in touch, and Shauna reached out to do a book club with me, but not in the typical sense. What we would do is we would get together over Zoom or a FaceTime call, and we would read every Sunday morning, I think, a page or chapter out of a book by T.J. Klune called Underneath the Whispering Door. And Shauna would read a page and I would read a page, and we'd go back and forth like that through the chapter. And at the top of the chapter, we would have a little visit, and maybe we would pause to talk about a sentence or a phrase or an idea that we liked, or if something really hit us emotionally. And then we would do a little wrap up and say goodbye. It was just an amazing way to stay in touch. And the other thing it did was bring back reading to me. I love stories. I am having to get a handle on my brain because of it loves stories. So, I mean, all of our brains are making stories all the time, and we just have to learn to like not let the tail wag the dog in that regard. Somewhere along the way, I lost reading. I can remember being an undergrad and spending an entire Sunday in my pajamas in a recliner reading Willa Cather's O Pioneers, and it's like the most delicious and decadent day that I have in my memory. And as I went through school, I always blame grad school for where I lost reading, because reading became a job. I've tried and tried to get reading to come back for me. But what I find is that my mind, the further I moved through life and the more responsibilities I got, I couldn't get traction. And as I would read silently in my mind, every sentence would kick off another thought process, and I would get to the end of a page or even the end of 2 pages and not know what I had read at all, because I read one sentence and then went off on some journey up here. And reading aloud with Shauna brought the joy of reading back to me, and having her there as a body double and us making it this engagement was revolutionary to me. It really tacked me into the story, and I loved it so much. A few years later, just this year, I started reading with my niece. I moved to Texas. She lives in Missouri. I love her to bits, and she has tried to get journaling practices started with me, where we would pass a journal back and forth, and I have been woefully miserable in following through on that. But the reading, we've decided to go back and forth from fiction to nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction, so that we sort of get imagination exercise, and both of them sort of act as a palate cleanser for the other. We started off with reading Circe, a reimagining of the Circe myth, and that was written by Madeline Miller. And now we're reading How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. And I just wanted you to know why I started to do this, why I started reading aloud, and what it has done for me. And everything that I make with Whistlepig Tales Studio, what I have learned over the years is that it's not the artwork, it's not the book, right? It's what it does inside of us. It's the process of the making, it's the process of the writing, it's the process of the reading, of the telling of the story that unlocks some truth inside of the reader or the viewer or the maker. And so that is why I do what I do and everything. Like, the art just is a catalyst. The book, the written art, is a catalyst as well. And I figured if I shared this with you, the world, strangers out there, one, I would tap into finding my other little introverted weirdos like myself. I don't mean weirdo in a bad way. I love weirdos. I thought I could share these stories. I thought it would help me to onboard this tapestry of fables that blankets the world and the history of humanity, and that it would help me do the reading that I have wanted to do. I mean, I have moved these books around so many times, and I read them here and there, but never like with any kind of consistency. And so I'm hoping that's what this will bring me, and I'm hoping for you, maybe it'll give you something to listen to while you go for a car ride, whether you are working in your studio, or maybe it's just a wrap up and you fall asleep to it. That would be great. I think whether I'm leading a guardian monster workshop, which is something you can learn about if you go to whistlepigtalesstudio.com, and tales is spelled T-A-L-E, like a story. Nuts. It's like way too clever of a name to be branding worthy, but honestly, I am trying so hard to just slow down and make my life small enough so it doesn't stress me the fuck out, and I can really enjoy and love and embrace all the things that the world does have to offer, because boy, are we, and by we I mean humanity, global humanity, we are good at being assholes, at coming up with horrible, destructive ways to torture each other. I can't believe how much, when I look at the news, I'm like, well, we're just living in a Game of Thrones world, and we always have been. But the world is also, you know, a field filled with bluebonnets, a laugh with a friend, clay squished between your hand, water running over your feet. It's all of those things too, and that is what I want to get my life down to. And so even to the point where I have really lowered the price points on the art that I make, because I want the little weirdos who are grinding it out and trying to live enough to sustain themselves, but not so much that their job rules their world. I want, if you respond to something that I've made, I want you to be able to acquire it. I am not at all interested in being a blue chip artist. Now, if someone backed up a truckload of money, would I take it? Yeah, because that's the world that we operate in, and I could do a hell of a lot of good. I don't think I would suddenly turn around and get a mansion and a yacht and have so many things that they were ruling my life. I think I would like pay for some people's college debt, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, I digress. Let's see what this story knows that we don't today. I'm going to be reading you a short 2-page story from the Treasury of American Folklore. Our Legends, Customs, and Beliefs, edited by Terrie, Hardin. And since I'm in Texas, I thought I would start with the story of Texas wild horses. Remember, we gather around stories so that we can remember who we are. And some of these stories will have something for you, and some of them you'll be like, well, that was just odd. I feel the same way. Let's explore them together. It is interesting to think that the scrawny, tawny-colored horses of southwest Texas are remote descendants of the ancient Arabian stock. But such, I think, is the case, and I believe you will agree when I have called your attention to a few historical facts. The Mohammedans began their conquest in AD 632, and by 732 had extended their dominion across Africa, through Spain, and into France. We are told that these Muslims introduced horses and horseback riding into Europe and made chivalry possible. Let us now skip a few centuries and come up almost 800 years to the exploration of the Spaniards, Cortez and Pizarro in America. These men brought with them horses from Spain, evidently ancient Arabian stock, and allowed these horses to escape on the western prairies. They grew and multiplied until they became numberless. Nor was their role in history played out, as all can testify who have read the story of Philip Nolan and his ill-fated expedition. Thus we see that the inferior Spanish Mustang is a descendant of the Andalusian horses and more remotely of the ancient Arabian stock. Their wild nature and dwarfed size are due to their survival for 400 years in a wild state and in a new and semi-desert environment. Wild horses are gregarious in nature and going in small herds, each herd led and protected by a stallion. Each stallion has his own range on which other herds are not permitted to trespass. Life is patriarchal, tribal, and nomadic. According to my narrator, the colts remained with the herd until they were a year old. When they reached any degree of maturity, they were driven out by the stallion as drones from a hive. The fillies were promptly adopted by a neighboring herd, while the horse colts were left in bunches of 5 or 6 to shift for themselves as they might. These bays rambled about on the range together for a year, by which time they were able-bodied, attractive, and fractious. On some morning, the young stallion would return to a herd, choosing one led by a weak horse. The leader of a herd becomes jealous of a stranger and charges after one of the newcomers. When he is thus led away, the young horses rush into the herd. The old stallion will allow himself to be led but a short distance away and soon returns. He continues the fight until he is killed, whereupon the stallions divide the herd among themselves, each taking 4 or 5 mares. Or they fight for supremacy to extermination, for no herd has more than one stallion. The stallion is the protector and will fight for the colts when they are young. He will stand still in the sun with the colt leaning against him. The horses range 25 miles from their watering place and return for water every 2 days. A whinny is the signal for the start to the water hole, and they return in a run with a mane and tail flying. They cut figure 8s on their way, picking up loose stalk and root. They get to water at about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. They drink until they are inflated to a capacity limit. Immediately after watering, any cow horse can run up on them in 20 minutes. After drinking, they stand about in the shade and sleep for an hour and then graze slowly away. Night finds them 5 or 6 miles from the watering hole. They lie down in the early part of the night, but get up and begin to graze about 12, continuing until 10 o'clock the next day. There are several ways of catching the mustangs. Strange as it may seem, it is possible for 2 men to capture them on foot. This is naturally the most tedious way and may require 2 weeks' time. As stated before, the mustangs have a definite range which they refuse to leave, or to which they instinctively return when forced off. The mustang catchers take advantage of this habit. One man starts following the herd. At first, he is unable to get within less than half or 3/4 of a mile, but he continues after them hour after hour. At intervals, he is relieved by mustang catcher number 2. At last, the herd becomes accustomed to the men and allows them to get much closer. The catcher selects then a tree with a heavy top and dense foliage. It is necessary to select this tree in the path which the horses take. Then the man conceals himself in the top of the tree with a rope, one end of which he has tied to the tree trunk. The second man seeks to get the herd to pass under the tree, in which case the rope is dropped over the head of one horse and he becomes a prisoner. When the catchers have horses to ride, the process is much shorter. Anything that destroys the unity of the herd is very disconcerting to the Mustang and makes the capture much easier. Sometimes domesticated horses are turned loose in the herd for this purpose. The most effective means is to catch one Mustang, clog him, and then set him free. The animal might be clogged by means of a wooden block fastened to the leg, or by taking a wagon rod about 3 feet long and bending it around the foreankle. This was an inhuman practice, resulting sooner or later in the death of the animal, but the catchers did not value the horses and paid no attention to the sacrifice. After one is caught, 4 or 5 may be captured in one day. When a choice one is found, he is roped, thrown, blindfolded, saddled, and ridden on the spot and considered broken. The quickest, though most uncertain way of catching the Mustang is the method known as creasing. That is to say, the horse is shot in such a way as to render him unconscious, and while in this condition is made a captive. You may wonder just how this is done. On the top of the horse's neck, just in front of the shoulders, is a very sensitive nerve center. If a bullet can be put through the fleshy part of the neck, all is well. The horse falls insensible, and while in this state is tied securely by the catcher. The horse regains consciousness to find himself a captive. He suffers no permanent injury, and a small crease on the top of the neck is all that remains to tell the story. It is still possible to find domesticated Mustangs bearing the mark of a former wild state. Such are the stories of the wild horses. These horses are fast disappearing, and all that remains is a vast number of yellow, brown, and dun-colored horses with a black stripe down the back and bulging eyes. There are many stories about these horses, and folklorists should get busy and gather them now. They will soon be a part of America's past, and so far in the background as to be useless from a historical, if not legendary, point of view. So this is an example of, I didn't necessarily know what I was going to get. And this book often does this. It's somewhere between a story told and historical document. And I do like that, but gosh, there are like so many. It's this story to me was like a cautionary tale, I suppose. If you, like, do you put yourself, when you hear that, in the place of the horses who were taken from their homeland and set free in a way, like, if you can survive, then you're free. But if you can't survive here, then you're going to die. And then recapturing them once the horses were on their own, independent, figured out their hierarchy, how to survive in this strange land that became their new land. And then once they had sorted everything out, then humans came back in and wanted to, like, take control of that resource again. But it's like ways, looking at, this is why a lot of times I love my monsters. I'm looking at nature and looking at how animals operate, and when that's a good thing and when that's a bad thing. And I guess this reminds me, there are some ways that, like, humans have been able to figure out the patterns of these horses so then they can take them over. But somehow with humans, we don't, like, there's never enough to sate our appetites. What I'm remembering is the story of John James Audubon, and he he loved nature, but he went out and killed it so that he could study it, look at it up close. There was no catch and release, and one of the birds that he studied was the Carolina parakeet. It was a very colorful bird, but the way it naturally protected itself was to like create a circle outward, but it brought them together in a cluster, so it was easy to kill a lot of them, and now they're extinct. So I guess there's a lesson to be learned here about not letting your habits make you easy pickings. That's a little oversimplified, but I am going off the cuff here. But when I lead a guardian monster workshop, one of the points I'm making is that the monsters are our own, but the magic is our own too. So with these horses, the monstrosity of the story that I just read, whether that was like human consumption, being taken from a homeland, being trapped and used almost to extinction, and the need for protection, or the monster of like just staying in your habits unthinkingly without changing it when you need to because the situation has evolved, and the rates of evolution. All of those things are potentially metaphors about the human experience, about your experience, my experience, a stranger's experience, and we all dip into each one of those things at different times, the monstrous part. So the monstrous things are part of us, but also the magic, like the survival in a new land, the maintaining of a system and a culture among the horses, the amazing ability for adaptation, the amazing human ability to recognize a resource and harness the power, right? All of those things are existing at the same time. So I'm always going to be looking for that and reminding you that the monsters are ours, but so is the magic. All right, until next time, keep your imagination wild and keep your heart your own.
Come gather round the story fire, come gather round and see. The monsters and the magic both are made by you and me.